Welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope. Nothing said on the Low Carb MD podcast is medical advice. Please consult your own doctor before making any lifestyle changes.
Welcome back to the Low Carb MD podcast. We have been talking about many things on this podcast over the last 6 years, including metabolic health, lowering processed carbohydrates and sugar. We've been talking about sticking to real food. We've been saying, question the conventional sort of medical authorities. Always make sure you talk to your doctor, have shared decision making. We've questioned a lot of things over the past 7 years, and we've gotten criticism. We've gotten a lot of criticism, but there were people way before us doing this. There were people that we've stood on the giants of. There are people who've been questioning medicine and demanding that nutrition be part of the medical curriculum for decades. And I'm not talking about vitamin deficiencies. I'm talking about what did indigenous people who are healthy eat, right? What does it take to be healthy? And we've talked about Weston Price before, and today we have the founding president of the Weston A. Price Foundation, and it is my absolute honor and pleasure to bring on the founding president, Sally Fallon Morell. I've met her in Washington, D.C. not too long ago, where we collaborated in hopefully changing policy in a positive direction in this country so we can get this country healthy, disease-free, and reverse the chronic disease epidemic. Now, I'll say in advance, we may disagree, and I can't wait to talk about all those disagreements. So, but I would love to hear. First, I'd like to say welcome.
Thank you.
And we will have her books in the show notes. So please go take a look at our books. And some of those books include grains and include tubers and certainly avoid artificial sweeteners. So, but we certainly believe in varying opinions here, and I'm delighted, absolutely delighted to have Sally join us today. So I'm just so thankful you agreed to, stoop yourself to our level, Sally.
No, I'm happy
Brian
to be here.
Brian messaged me, can't make it, and he's an internist out in Arizona, and he's just a huge adorer of and a supporter of the Weston A. Price Foundation. So he sends his regards, Dr. Brian Lenskis. So we're both so excited to have you here. So maybe we could start with before we get into it, you I think we'll start with where you wanted to go, which is you're like, Tro, I'm not that low carb, right? And Weston A. Price looked at various cultures and societies, and certainly, I mean, we can get into dental caries, but there are many civilizations that thrived on carbohydrates. So maybe we could just start there. This is the Low Carb MD podcast, so I'm sure that's an area to start with. I'd love to, at some point, talk about the leadership it took to start the foundation, lead the foundation. I'd love to hear about that as well. But let's start with what you said, which is
the subject at hand.
Let's start with there.
So Dr. Price looked at populations all over the globe, indigenous populations, and some of them were indeed hardly any carbs, like the Northern Canadians and the Eskimo, and they didn't have plants. Those diets were extremely high in fat. And that's the first thing I would say is if you're going to go very low carb, you really need to eat high fat. But many others were pretty high in carbs. The Swiss had oats. Swiss had rye bread, and the Gaelic people had oats. And then in the South Seas, you had tubers and fruit. And so we never give any hard and fast rules about macronutrients about carbs, let's put it like that, because there was such a disparity in what he found. What we can all agree on, there were no refined carbs. There was no white flour, no white sugar, no white rice. It was whole grains and tubers and things like that. But the other half of the equation is the nutrient density. And these diets were very high in minerals and extremely high in the fat soluble vitamins A, D, and K. And we only get those from a few places. We get them from animal fats, especially fats of grass fed animals. We get them from organ meats, and we get them from certain types of seafood, especially shellfish, like oysters. These are very nutrient dense foods. So our diet, we don't say, oh, you can't have potatoes. We just say, put the butter on the potatoes, put the grass fed butter on the potatoes. We don't say you can't have bread. We say prepare the bread properly by sourdough method so that it's easy to digest. And we do recommend including in your diet the really high nutrient density foods like liver, oysters, fish eggs, um, those kind of foods 2 or 3 times a week. Those are the real powerhouses. But otherwise, I eat a diet that includes sourdough bread, potatoes cooked in duck fat, and natural sweeteners. I eat oatmeal, soaked oatmeal with lots of butter on it. So we like to say that the Wise Traditions diet, there's no renunciation. It's just knowing how to choose and how to prepare.
I'd love to talk about that a little bit. You know, I can't agree with you more. The amount of nutrients and things like oysters, liver, certain nuts and seeds, it's through the roof. And I think people don't appreciate the fact that a lot of the monocropping that's happened, a lot of the meats that we're eating now, they're just deprived of the minerals they used to have. And many of the people coming into my clinic, Sally, they're actually nutrient deficient when they
Yeah,
walk in. They may be wildly overweight, but they're nutrient deficient.
right. And
Um,
and they and you can do a low carb diet and still be nutrient deficient if you're just eating conventional meat and not a lot of fats.
I've seen
Um,
it. Yeah, I've seen
yeah,
vitamin
you
C
can still be
deficiency,
nutrient deficient.
folate deficiency. I've certainly
Mm.
seen it in low carb dieters as well, when the restriction is really high and the it's ribeye every day,
Yeah,
or a lean sirloin every day. It's hey, wait a second, where do you plan on getting vitamin C from? Animals would eat liver, right? That was
yeah,
minimally cooked, right? And
yeah,
filled with folate, and vitamin
yeah,
C, right?
yeah.
So
Liver
it's
is just such a key food. It's got all the B vitamins, including B12, lots of minerals. It even has vitamin C. And I know that's a struggle for lots of people, but there's lots of ways to enjoy liver. And my favorite way is a pate, chicken liver pate. And by the way, the poultry livers are the best ones because they have so much vitamin K in them and vitamin D. Whereas beef liver is there's your vitamin A, but you're not getting vitamin D and vitamin K from beef liver. So, um, but it's really important to get that in the diet. I have to tell you a story. We just finished our conference, and a woman brought up a very cute little baby, round face. So it was a Weston Price baby, but the baby was extremely pale. And I said, "Oh my goodness, this baby needs liver." And they brought the baby up to me the next day, and the baby was pink all over, rosy cheeks. And we had served chicken liver pate for one of the meals, and they'd given it to her, and just one serving of that chicken liver pate, and it looked like her anemia was fixed.
Let me tell you, I love going to the steakhouse and asking for the unusual cuts, the kidney, the chicken
Yeah,
heart, the chicken
yeah,
liver. I mean, I don't think there's another animal that would exclude those things, right? Besides humans. Um, one of so I think there's a lot of agreement here. Eat nutrient dense food, certainly. One of the things that I've I've found along the way is we live in a very addictive food environment. The way the average person eats, this is not real. Most people, with their concept of normal is not normal. Our food is not
Yeah,
normal,
that's
right?
right.
Like you're talking about duck pate and duck fat, having liver, and that's normal. Like it sounds normal to you and me. We're having a conversation,
Mm.
but some of the listeners out there who are just getting started with their metabolic health journey, or trying to lose weight, or trying to just reclaim their health or reverse chronic disease,
Yeah.
they're used to pizza and birthday cake, right?
Yep.
And washed
Mm.
down with soda. So, a lot of times we try to walk people along the path. And, this is one of the things I've thought a long, long time about. And I want to get your opinion because the extent of chronic disease that we're seeing right now has never been seen before.
Yeah.
Never been seen
And in
before.
children is so tragic. Yeah. Well, I can tell you a story about this. People try to use their willpower to stop eating sugar. And we had a gal write us a letter. She said she'd been on our diet for a while and high fat diet, but she still had this one bad habit. When she went to the supermarket, she always went to the cookie aisle and got a package of cookies to eat. She said one day she went to the cookie aisle and stood there trying to decide what to buy, and she realized she didn't want the cookies. And she was able to walk away without any willpower. And a good nutrient dense diet will eventually do that for you. It will take away I look at a package of cookies, and I was a sugarholic. Believe me, I could eat a package of cookies in 5 minutes. And now I look at a package of cookies and I actually get kind of nauseous even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And there was a study where they took rats and they addicted them to sugar water. And then they gave them a diet that was 40% lard. And you know what? The rats didn't want the sugar water anymore, and the researchers were kind of disappointed. They were upset because the rats didn't want their tasty treats, and they said they were on a chronic high fat diet, like making it sound like some terrible thing. But what most people need to get over is their fear of animal fat, and the fear of animal fat has been drummed into us starting in grade school with the dietary guidelines, and until we get the fats back in our diet, we won't have the willpower to resist, because if we're not eating enough saturated fat, saturated animal fat, the body has a backup plan. And that plan is to make saturated fat out of carbs. And so the body's going to crave sugar and white flour.
I can't agree with you more. And there's so much evidence that supports this. Diets higher in saturated fat actually, believe it or not, lower the blood levels of the saturated fat, meaning the body's
They
using it
lower
up.
triglycerides and they lower blood sugar and they lower cravings, they lower hunger. And, our big thing is butter. Don't be afraid of butter. I mean, I eat half a stick of butter a day, and that's what keeps me healthy, I'm sure. And I don't crave these things I used to crave.
How much do you think the fear of fat and the fear of cholesterol have, and the embracement of sort of processed carbohydrates, right? How much do you think that this would you say that's 100% of our chronic disease epidemic, 90%, 80%, those three
Well, I would
things?
say 80%. I would say 80%. I mean, there's other things going on. There's environmental poisons, there's EMF, which is very toxic. There's a lot of things going on, but I think you can do 80% of it with with a high fat diet. So, what does this look like? It looks like moderate protein. That's eggs, cheese, meat, organ meat, seafood. It means moderate carbs. I'm not saying we're overdoing with the carbs, but you can have oatmeal twice a week, and you can eat a little bread, sourdough bread, and you can eat some sweet potatoes or potatoes. Um,
Do you worry about the
but the
glyphosate?
rest of it is fat.
Do you
And
worry do you worry about the glyphosate like in the crops? Do you worry about that in the
well,
wheats and
you
the
really
crops?
need to buy organic, for sure. especially your grains, because they're sprayed with glyphosate just before harvest. You get the full brunt of them. Now you can't avoid it completely, but another thing that we recommend is broth, bone broth, and that has a lot of glycine, and that'll push out the glyphosate.
Right.
That's
Right.
not bone broth. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
The chicken bone broth? No. Oh, you
Yeah,
want it stewed
that's
longer.
the yeah. You need
Yeah.
to make your own.
You need to make, yeah, probably do. You know what? That'll be my next thing is to do it. I do drink a lot of bone broth, but it's pre-made, you know.
Yeah, and there's
Well, maybe tell me
usually
the problems with that. So I drink a
well,
lot
there's
of Kettle
usually
and Fire.
MSG in it. There's usually MSG. It's not labeled, but there'll be some hydrolyzed protein or something like that, and that really messes with your brain. The MSG.
Yeah, it's organic. Well, it's not on the label, so they must be. It says organic bone
So,
broth, chicken bone broth, but
well, put it in
yeah.
the fridge and see if it gels.
Oh, it doesn't.
No, because there's very little glycine and there's very little collagen in it.
Right. So I'm gonna make my own. That's it. You've
Yeah.
inspired me, Sally. I'm gonna make my own. And that I have made my own. It's just, it's tough. It's very difficult, but you've inspired
It's
me. I'm
not
gonna do it.
actually. Get a good
Slow
slow
cooker.
cooker like
Yeah, I put it in
Cuisinart.
yeah, I put it in there. I got 8 quart or 10 quart one. I just put it in
Yeah,
there.
one that can keep the temperature very low. So and do it overnight, and you'll get a good gelatinous broth.
Yeah.
I had some I must have eaten something when traveling, and I came home and I had it was kind of like food poisoning, I guess. And I felt horrible. And I always keep broth in the freezer, and I took that out and had a mug of broth. And I mean, I could feel in 10 minutes it going away. And
Yeah.
within 10 minutes of drinking that broth.
It's funny. My wife was saying the same thing today. Her sister started drinking a lot more bone broth, and she's drinking a lot more bone broth, and they've ditched the coffee, picked up the bone broth, nice warm
Yes.
cup
Yes.
every morning, and they feel great, and their
Yeah.
their bloat is down. They feel good.
Yep. Yep. And of
All
course,
these, yeah, go ahead.
coffee is, does the same thing to your adrenal glands that sugar does. It boosts adrenaline production, but then you have to come back to normal. And that's very hard on the adrenal glands.
Yeah. So, can I ask you about your specific diet? You mentioned potatoes, grains, oatmeal. I don't know if you drink juices or not, or
No, I
um,
don't know.
yeah. So, like, can you give me an example of yesterday, like
Oh,
what your
yes.
diet looks like? Like, just walk me through. You woke up, like, I would just as simple for the average person listening. It was like, okay, I hear her saying organ meat, I hear her saying oatmeal. Like, what does a day or two of your eating look like?
Okay. Well, I kind of alternate between eggs or oatmeal. Now, this is oatmeal I've soaked overnight, so it's truly pre-digested. The mornings I have oatmeal, I usually have a couple pieces of good natural bacon for the fats, and then the oatmeal I eat with a lot of butter. And I drink some beet kvass in the morning. That's a fermented beet drink. And then for lunch, I usually eat a late lunch. I do intermittent fasting, so I just have 2 meals, but I have a big lunch. And yesterday I had some pate on sourdough bread with a salad, and then I had some berries with raw cream on them. That was my lunch. Very
That's
high fat.
so high fat, moderate protein. It sounds like moderate to low. I mean, the carbohydrate count in a bit of soaked oats is not much, right?
Oh, it isn't?
I mean,
No.
it's not maybe in a big bowl, 30
I think
grams.
I think the number is 50 grams of carbs a day, and your thyroid gland needs carbs. So you need a minimum of 50 a day, which is like a small potato or a couple pieces of bread.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that's a pretty low carb diet,
But
compared to
I
the,
do grains. I do grains. It's
yeah.
funny, I'm not a big fruit eater, but a big salad eater. And I make my own salad dressing. That's very important.
What type of fats do you use in your salad dressing?
I use olive oil.
You use olive oil. And
Yeah.
like, I'm just curious. I have to
Good.
like, I'm very paranoid about olive oil. So how do you
Well,
go
I
about
know.
your,
I know. I mean, we get olive oil from a gal who I know her, and it's up from her own crop of olive trees.
so she's pressing it herself, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or
Got it.
takes it to a press. Yeah,
Got it. Okay.
that's what they do in California. There's a couple of presses that they can take the olives to.
That's so really a high fat, medium protein, I'd say that your diet is even fairly low in carbs, but it's
Well,
not
if you're let's just think, if you're 60% fat, now mind you, that doesn't look like 60% on your plate because that might be 3 tablespoons of fat per meal. 60% fat and 20 15, I would say 15% protein. So there's another 25% is carbs.
yeah. So that sounds
So, I mean,
well,
compared to the average American diet, it's a low carb diet.
yeah.
But I'm not just deliberately avoiding carbs.
Yeah. Can I ask you, I've thought about this for a long time and I look back at sort of indigenous populations and how they accommodated carbohydrates and some very healthy populations that had like 80% carbohydrate and were still pretty healthy, maybe
Yeah.
70%. Not that I recommend that, but
Yeah, I've heard
um,
that, and I do question whether they have seen the whole diet when they say it was 70, 80% carbs. Like I think they think the people of someplace in the South Seas, and I don't think they actually observed the whole diet. I'm sure it wasn't that high in carbs.
certainly very carb inclusive. At the least
Yeah,
you
oh
can say
yes,
that.
lots of
Yeah,
tubers. Yes, yes.
yeah.
And they were
And then,
usually fermented. So that changes them too.
yeah, here Bobby walks around with sauerkraut. It's funny. I was talking to a patient yesterday. He's like, my heritage does the same thing. I walk around with kimchi,
Yeah,
a lot of fermented carbohydrate. But, I think about the populations from 5 decades ago and earlier, right? They were not exposed to modern vegetable oils. They were not exposed
yeah.
to, they really had no significant obesity, right? No significant obesity the way
No,
we have
you
it.
look at even in there's films of 1910 New York. You do not see fat people. Everybody's slim.
So I'm sort of, and I look at, people have said, Tro, why do you think that carbohydrate restriction is so important in the modern diet? And, when you look at observational data, which it has its issues, decades ago, it appeared that fat was not great. And certainly the newer observational data in the last 20 years has been suggesting that carbs are not that great. Um, so it's tough to make conclusions like what's going on, how are we flip-flopping, right? Why are we flip-flopping? But what I think based on the mechanistic data is that the more chronic disease, the more obesity, the more diabetes, the more powerful the carbohydrate restriction component becomes. Not
Maybe.
to say, not to say that all those, everything nutrient density absolutely necessary. Not to say, we definitely eat animal fats, but part of me thinks, gosh, I think the sicker we are, the more that part of the pendulum matters. I don't know.
Yeah.
Wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, and you really have to say what kind of carbs too. I mean, extruded breakfast cereal, cornflakes with skim milk.
That
That's
sounds like a
a
disaster.
breakfast that's going to really mess with your metabolism and send
None
your
of my
blood sugar.
kids, none of my kids have had that breakfast
Yeah.
ever. I just want
Neither
you
of
to,
mine. Neither of
yeah,
mine. But my breakfast of oatmeal with butter and a side of bacon, that's that doesn't mess with my metabolism or my blood sugar.
yeah. That sounds
So
amazing. That sounds
again,
delicious.
well, yeah.
That's
So again, I think a lot of it has to do with what kind of carbs and how they're prepared and how they're eaten.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. 100% agree.
And every now and then I'll wake up, if I've had eggs for 2 or 3 days in a row, I'll wake up and think my body needs oatmeal now. I need that uh,
You feel like
oatmeal
it calls to
breakfast.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's just fascinating, and you feel strong, you feel good, and I'm happy to hear that. Um, I haven't had oatmeal in 10 years.
Well,
10
be
years.
sure to cook it like in Nourishing Traditions. If I eat oatmeal that hasn't been soaked overnight,
Yeah.
I actually get toxic shock from it, and I've almost passed out from it. You really need to soak it in something acidic, and it's the recipes in my book, Nourishing Traditions, and then eat it with fat, cream or butter.
Yeah, that'll definitely dampen the glycemic effect for sure.
Oh, sure, yeah,
Having a bit of, it'll just hold it in the stomach longer.
yeah.
But that combination makes me ravenous. The
You can put some chopped nuts on it, pine nuts. You can put a little maple syrup. You can put coconut on it,
I haven't had maple
raisins.
syrup in 10 years either. Gosh, you
Mhm.
know, you're gonna get this. You're gonna, Sally, be surprised. I haven't had an orange in 10 years.
That's interesting. Now I'm not a big, I actually
Like
don't do
lemon though. I
well
have lemon.
on
Yeah.
high pectin fruits. So apples, peaches, all that. They have to be cooked or I don't do well on them. But I love citrus fruit. Not that I eat a lot, but every now and then I really want a half a grapefruit or
Oh, I
a
love
small glass of
grapefruit.
fresh orange juice. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna shift gears a little bit. I want people to understand a little bit about Weston A. Price, what he found, why he's so important, and why this foundation is important that you founded, and
Mhm.
sort of the mission that you've really led and continued. So I'd love for you to just give the listener I know you've told the story a million and one times, but I think it's an important story nonetheless to tell.
Well, I was very lucky to grow up in a family that I would say my parents were the first foodies. My mother was a wonderful cook and they traveled a lot. And so she would come home and make the dishes that they'd eaten. So I grew up eating a lot of interesting food. Funnily enough, she never fixed liver. I think she thought it would be too hard to get us to eat it. And we didn't have raw milk. By the way, that's a subject we need to touch on. But we always had butter and we always had lots of fatty meats and eggs and cream. It was French cooking basically. And then I started out with my own family. My first child was born in 1973. And that was just about the time that this low fat message was coming out that we should avoid fat, that we should um, eat a kind of plant-based diet. And I just knew, and I just knew this was wrong. I knew if I didn't give good fats to my daughter, that she'd be cranky and grabby, just like I would be. So then I discovered Weston Price. I found his book in a bookstore and read about these diets and the importance of the fats and the fat soluble vitamins. And so I knew see, I'm doing it right. And I never paid any attention to what the government was saying after that. And I had three more children, three boys, and raised them. They got healthier with each child because I was learning more and doing more liver, and started doing cod liver oil for the children. And anyway, when my youngest was in school full time, went to kindergarten, I got this idea to write a book that would put Dr. Price's findings into practical form, and that's Nourishing Traditions. And it actually goes beyond Dr. Price because he didn't talk about proper preparation or broth or any of the other um, subjects I put in the book. But anyway, the book came out in 96, second edition in 99. I had to make a bunch of corrections. And then my co-author and I founded the Weston A. Price Foundation to continue to provide information about studies and just kind of keep this in people's focused on this importance of the nutrient dense diet. And here we are. We just had our 25th conference. We're 25 years, 2025, 25 years. We had a wonderful conference in Salt Lake City, and we've published a journal this whole time. We have a great podcast. We have a lot of interesting material that you get if you become a member. We encourage people to join. It's $40. We have never raised the price of membership in 25 years. And then you get to be a member of our family and get our journal and get our updates and so forth.
I cannot. What I'd love to talk about, I know. Remind me, Weston A. Price, if I remember, he was a dentist, correct? Right? Or he
He was
was,
a dentist,
yeah,
and
and he
he
was
was,
interested in caries, right? That's how what
and
sparked
not
his
only caries,
curiosity.
but crowded and crooked teeth. And most of his patients had mouths full of infection, and they had narrow palates and crooked teeth. And he had heard that traditional people had beautiful teeth. So he traveled for 10 years. Every summer he went to different parts of the globe to see for himself. And he found 14 population groups that had excellent dental health, virtually no cavities, and beautiful broad smiles. None of them needed braces. So, he was able to compare these people on traditional diets with people who had started to eat the white man's food. And within one generation, the facial structure changed, and they had overbites, underbites, crowded teeth, narrow faces, not the beautiful round faces of the traditional people. And then, of course, rampant tooth decay as well, causing a great deal of pain and suffering. And he took photographs. That's the amazing thing about his book, these photographs of the healthy traditional people. Their teeth are just amazing, how broad their smiles are and how wide their faces are. And so this is what we need to get back to. And we put a big emphasis on maternal diet for preconceptual care and pregnancy, and then breastfeeding and the growing child. And we have lots of wonderful Weston Price babies now who look like the babies in the people in the photographs.
You know, when I was 13 years old, you're talking about childhood and children. When I was 13 years old, I was 210 pounds, the weight I am
Mm-hmm.
right now. Okay, at 13, my older brother, I think when he was 13, he was nearing 300 pounds. My younger brother's probably the same. And we ate predominantly skim milk cereal,
Uh-huh.
lunch food, right? Our school lunch food. And then we would have episodically, like, just sort of cooking that was more traditional and ethnic. I'm an Armenian heritage, right? So we would
Mm-hmm.
have, the chickpea based, we would have hummus, or we'd have
Mm-hmm.
tabbouleh, which would have a little
Yeah.
bit of grain in it. We actually would do raw liver. We would have
Yeah.
raw liver is something we would eat. We'd
That
even have
probably
raw
saved you.
meat.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, we'd even have raw meat, but not often. But raw meat with grains mixed
Mm-hmm.
together, like a kufte. But those was like very
Kibbeh. It
rare.
was kibbeh, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
we call it a little different, but yeah. But we those are very rare. Those are very rare. We rarely had those. And we were exposed to just a modern food environment, and we blew up. My whole family, we blew up. Now, about 10 years ago, I found real food, low carb eating, which is almost exactly how you described, just less emphasis on the grains. I'd eat grains maybe 5, 10 times a year, and slightly less emphasis on the tubers, although occasionally I'll have a yuca, right? And I reclaimed a lot of my health, and over time, I increased the organ meats in my diet. Uh, uh, the way that probably my ancestors ate. And
Well,
my health's
eh,
never been better. Now,
yeah.
I want to juxtapose my son, my 13. He turned 13, and I'm just amazed. He just ran, and I'm just sharing this with you as a proud father. He just ran a great jawline, teeth not crooked, like I have crooked teeth and
Yeah.
grew up with crooked teeth. I had a picture of me and this, 6 years old with crooked teeth, and nice, great jawline. And the kid just ran a 5:20 mile, like an amazing mile
Wow.
time,
Wow. For a child.
right? And
Yeah.
I look at, you know, the food environment I grew up with and the food environment he has. And that's the only thing that's changed.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is reversible. That's the good news. The other thing that happens when the face gets narrow is the pelvic opening gets narrow and childbirth becomes very painful and difficult. But when the face is broad and the teeth are straight, then the pelvic opening is round and childbirth is very easy. So lots of people are waking up just like you did. They're abandoning these horrible foods. They're the foods of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and going back to what their ancestors ate. And there's a lot of things you can do for your health, but as you say, this is the basis, and without that, nothing else really works.
I mean, I just had a hit piece on me, Sally. The
You had a what?
Guardian, a hit piece on me. Uh,
Oh,
because like you, I'm concerned about sort of environmental exposures. And I know
yes.
that's something that the Weston Price Foundation is also very concerned with. They ran The Guardian. I always thought I would be so proud to be in The Guardian,
Yeah.
and I would be so proud to be in the Daily Mail. But they said health influencer causes fears sunscreens, over
Oh,
sunscreens.
yeah.
That's what they
Well,
said about me, Sally. You know,
they're horrible.
how does the Weston Price Foundation and how does Sally, what does she
Yeah.
think about sunscreen?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I have a friend, nutritionist in California, and she is getting a lot of surfers. These are surfers. These are masculine men coming in with erectile dysfunction. And the first thing she does is take them off of sunscreens. And then she puts them on a high fat diet. And she says, come see me in a month. And they saunter in a month later with big grins on their face. And she said, see, it worked. You don't have to see me anymore. So I think the sunscreens are just horrible, and people are putting them on their children, slathering them all over every day. When even they're covered in clothes, they don't even need it. And what's this doing to your little boys? These sunscreens not only contain estrogens, they contain testosterone blockers. I
Yep,
mean, they're
hormone
just
disrupting chemicals that absorb through the skin
they
to
absorb through the
illegal
skin
level to
and they put
illegal
on the
limits.
whole body.
Yeah,
And yes, we should be very, very afraid of sunscreens.
yeah, yeah. Not the sun, maybe, right? Not the sun.
No, no, get out in the sun. Sun's good for you.
Yeah, it's a
By the way,
free
I've had
vitamins.
a lot of people tell me that once they get off the industrial seed oils and onto the saturated animal fats, that they're not so sensitive to the sun. They can tolerate the sun a lot better.
I think when you remove inflammation from the
Yeah,
body, right? I've been thinking about this for a long time. I have a clinic that, people come in, the average patient loses about 43 pounds at 1 year, Sally. And I'm very proud of these results. And yet when they come in, they're on average 293 pounds, right? And
yeah.
their vitamin D is low, their vitamin C is low. And I thought to myself, these are overfed, quote unquote, overfed people who are low in vitamin D. How does that happen? Right? It has to be
Let me
used
just
up. Yeah, it
say
has to be
something
used up.
here.
Yeah,
We are extremely concerned about people taking vitamin D. Now,
yeah,
they
I
may
am
be
too.
low in vitamin D, but when you take vitamin D on its own, you deplete vitamin A and vitamin K. So we recommend cod liver oil, which has the A and D together. And we
Yeah.
recommend getting vitamin D from food where it's balanced with these other vitamins.
Yeah, I've never recommended D without K, but the question is more of a philosophical question. How is it that the body lowers vitamin D? And it must be used up in response to inflammation, right? It is the only way to explain these low vitamin Ds.
Oh, well, I think you just need vitamin D for lots of things. And by the way, let me just say D and K together is big time depletion of vitamin A. You really need to go to the cod liver oil instead. Inflammation, what is inflammation? It's the body's therapy. We need to look at the cause of the inflammation, not just the inflammation. And of course, industrial seed oils are very damaging, and that damage, the body responds with inflammation.
Yeah. I mean,
Just
it's
like
something.
when you break your ankle, the ankle inflames, but that's therapy. It's cushioning the injury so that you don't go out and walk on your ankle. It's telling you to keep off your ankle.
100%. And that's how I got to 350 pounds. It was my body siloing, basically protecting my blood. Uh, and I'm a 100% believer inflammation is a response, and it uses up both vitamin C and vitamin D. And this is why I think, when we look in kids who have obesity, their level of vitamin C is almost like
Yeah, they don't eat any
they don't
fruits
have
and
any.
vegetables.
I
Yeah,
don't think it's not just eating. I think their body is depleting these vital antioxidants, nutrients,
could be.
you know,
And
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 the
and
level
by
of
the way,
vitamin D is I've seen single digit vitamin Ds.
oh gosh, the what I was going to say, the really good source of vitamin C is sauerkraut. This vitamin C goes up almost tenfold when you make cabbage into sauerkraut.
I'm gonna
So
make some
just
sauerkraut and kimchi now. I'm gonna make it.
yeah,
Gonna get it
what
on my.
yeah, and of course you can buy them now. They have to be raw, but a lot of these things, we put out a shopping guide where you can order homemade broth, you can order sauerkraut, you can order all kinds of things, grass-fed butter, grass-fed raw butter. We haven't talked about milk yet.
Oh, I know the answer already, and most of the listeners do as well.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, do you feel so? I know you feel strongly about raw milk. This is absolutely. I think a lot of people have been, like we've been listening to quote unquote medical authorities for a long time, and I think finally people are waking up to say, wait a second, do we really, if you know the farmer, you know the cow, and see the milk coming out, do you really need to homogenize and pasteurize it? And to the people that are serving raw milk, do they need to be locked up? Absolutely not.
yeah.
Right. I
Well,
think it's a travesty, really.
but even in California, you've got a dairy that's 1,600 cows, and they sell raw milk all over the state, and they have a superlative safety record. It's just wrong to say that raw milk is inherently dangerous. Pasteurized milk causes 20 to 30 deaths from anaphylactic shock per year. That's pretty dangerous, in my opinion. That raw milk doesn't do that. So, and it should be full fat milk. The fat's there for a reason, and you want the creamiest milk you can get. And that helps you absorb iron and helps you absorb calcium for strong bones. And the weird, giving our growing children skim milk, that's a crime against humanity. That's genocide.
I think a lot of things that we're doing to our kids are a crime.
Yeah.
I look at myself at 13 years old. I was the current weight I am now, crooked teeth, poor. My mental health was not optimal, all because my diet was
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
completely manipulated. So I'm a big
And
believer.
the high carbs make you unstable, I think, because your blood sugar is going all over the place and it drops too low. And that's what I suffered from was low blood sugar. And I would pass out from low blood sugar.
Yeah, and many people don't know it's because of a lack of metabolic flexibility and
Yep, that's right.
exposure to high carb diets. So
Yep.
if you have metabolic syndrome, lack metabolic flexibility, eat high carbs, you're going to experience low blood sugar. these warring tribes, all these people that we talked about, they didn't die from low blood sugar. They didn't have
No,
low blood sugar.
no,
They would
no.
run 25 miles. The Messiah,
Yeah.
they would run 25 miles, fight a warring tribe, and then run back and then eat.
Yeah.
You know,
But the other thing is they didn't do that every day. Then they rested.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Any other, major things that you think the listener out here who's getting into diet, trying to tackle their weight, any other major tips you think that they should know about before
Well,
they, continue on their journey, the truths
yeah.
they need to hear?
Well, salt is very important. All traditional cultures ate salt, and it was unrefined salt. Uh, Even in America, I've had people tell me, "Oh, well, the American Indians didn't eat salt." Yes, they did. There was a huge salt trade in America. There were families of Indians that didn't belong to any particular tribe, and they just carried salt, especially from the Ohio River Valley, which is a lot of salt there. And it was when the Spaniards disrupted the salt trade that all the diseases came into the Indians. So you do need salt. I'm not saying the kind of salt that's on potato chips. That's not what I mean. I mean, add salt to your food until it tastes good to you. And I add salt to my water, source of minerals, and makes the
Oh,
water a lot
geez.
more thirst quenching.
Let's see if I can show it to you. Yeah, I got volcanic salt here. I have, ancient sea salt right here.
Yeah,
So salt, I agree. Fat, salt, real animal proteins and fats are
yeah.
beyond, the most vital thing I think most people
And
can
and I
eat.
do think because we don't eat bones like traditional people did, the dairy is important. It needs to be full fat and it needs to be raw.
Yeah, to get those nutrients.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. Don't forget the bone broth.
Yeah.
Don't buy the ones I make it at home, right? Don't buy the
Yeah.
ones that I'm
But the
buying.
bone broth is not a good source of calcium. We were very surprised when we tested it. There was very little calcium in bone broth. The bone broth helps you create cartilage, and your bones are part cartilage, and then the calcium is laid down on the cartilage. So on the collagen, excuse me, on the collagen.
Besides milk, where would you get? I mean, obviously, cheese and other fermented dairy, I guess, would
Yes.
be a great source.
Yes.
Any other sources of calcium that you
Well,
recommend?
in traditional cultures, if they didn't have milk, they would um, dry out bones of small animals and or cook them and then crush them and eat the bones. The Eskimos ate the fermented bones of the fish, which were very soft. They've just found a pot in from ancient China, and there was a residue of bones inside the pot. So the Chinese were adding powdered bones to their food. So
I
there's
believe
only
that.
two sources of calcium in the human diet. One is bones and one is dairy. And
Got it.
we're very fortunate in the West. We consume dairy. It's very available. We just need to get the right kind of dairy. And by the way, we have a website, realmilk.com, where you can find raw milk uh, anywhere you live in the United States.
That
It's widely available.
that's great. Any other tips before and anything else you want our listener to know? Our listeners, somebody between the age of 30 and 60, getting started on their health journey, trying to get off medications, trying to get good medical advice, good dietary advice, trying to get back on the right track. Anything else you want
Yeah.
them to know?
Well, start with butter. Eat lots of butter. Make your own salad dressing. Um, eat
Eat
just
real
eat,
food,
eat real
right?
food. Yeah, yeah. Eat real food and
Amen to
not the
that.
junk. Because shop the aisles of the supermarket.
Can I ask one last question before we
Yeah.
part ways here? Uh, to what degree is faith and spirituality a part of the Weston Price sort of movement and foundation? What do
Well,
you think about the importance of this in our modern life?
yeah. I think it's important in all of our lives, but that's not our focus. Our focus is food, and we welcome all faiths to our foundation. Um, we don't. Want to turn anyone away with promoting one belief system or another. A lot of us are into Rudolf Steiner, but we try to keep that out of our teachings on nutrition. These are universal. The body, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, the body needs the same things.
Yes, ma'am. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Thank you so much for
Oh, you're
coming on.
welcome. Thank you for
I
having me.
appreciate it.
And
I appreciate you coming on and sort of educating us, educating our listeners. And guys, look at the show notes. You're really dealing with a person who's had a huge impact. This organization has had a huge impact on the healthcare of, a lot of people, and it's becoming more and more noticed finally. I think with Maha and RFK. And just want to thank you for your time today and for all the work you've done in your leadership and willing to stand up against people who've probably criticized you for decades. So I want to thank you
they
for your
kind of just
continued
ignore
fight.
me. By the way,
Well, they shouldn't,
one of our employees was at Costco the other day, and they were selling chicken feet and beef tallow. So that's real progress to find these in Costco.
That's where I got my bone broth. So,
Girl,
but I'll be making it now. I promise, Sally.
yeah, okay.
All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. And yes, look forward to being able to post this podcast.
Yeah, maybe we can connect. I'd love to come to one of these conferences. If you can give me more information about the Weston Price Foundation, we'll certainly put it in. And any conferences you have, I'm sure our
Well,
listeners would love to come.
our next conference is October of 26th, and it's going to be in Washington, D.C.
Great. Oh my God, I can't wait. I'd love to be there. So
Yeah, you
hopefully
should
we'll.
come.
Great. Awesome. All
Our
right,
conference website is wisetraditions.org, and the foundation website is westonaprice.org.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in DC in 2026.
All right. Okay.
All right, Sally. Have a good
Thank
one.
you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon by going to lowcarbmd.com.